Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and clarity. I'm your host, Ezekiel Iferia, and today's guest is Adriene Caldwell. Adriene lived through what she calls darkness given free rein, surviving untreated mental illness in her family, sexual violence, homelessness, and a foster care system that often does more harm than good. But she didn't become a statistic. She became an author and a thriver. She realized early on that she was living in a world unwilling to play savior, so she had to save herself. She is the author of Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines. She's here to talk about the destruction and discovery of the self, how to find hope when you are living in a nightmare, and the grit required to defy the odds. So, Adriene, thank you very much for joining us on the show today. I am very excited to welcome you.
Thank you very much for having me here, Ezekiel. It is truly a privilege to be here with your audience and with you. As you mentioned, I am the author of Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines, and it's the story of my early childhood to early 20s. And you mentioned a few of the traumas that I endured during childhood, but I want to go ahead and go through the entire list because it will help the audience. It will help you understand how I got to be in such a bad position and how I was failing so miserably. So I witnessed the sexual assault of a young girl when I was 5 years old. I saw a girl drown when I was 7 years old. I did suffer emotional and physical abuse, extreme poverty, mental illness runs in my family. My grandfather, mother, and cousin all suffered from schizophrenia. I was at one point homeless, my mother, brother, and I. I did endure horrifically abusive foster care. I've struggled with bulimia, an eating disorder, drug and alcohol addiction. I've endured pedophilia, and I have attempted suicide more times than I can remember. I've also endured a significant number of deaths in my life, beginning with my grandmother at 7, my mother at 22, my husband when I was 35, and then an aunt and an uncle. And incest. My grandfather sexually assaulted my mother. So after going through that childhood, after living through all of those things, I did go to college. I was a ward of the state of Texas. My mother had relinquished her parental rights. And when the state is your guardian, they let you go to college, public university, as long as it's in the state, in a public university, they don't charge you tuition or fees. So I did go to college. I was able to graduate, but by the time I graduated at the age of 21, I had already dealt with a cocaine addiction during college, which I was able to overcome, but I replaced it with alcohol. I was drinking very, very heavily. And after I graduated college, I could not find a job. And it basically created this perfect storm where I was back in Houston. That's where I'm from. I had moved home after graduating college, and I was drinking every night, every other night. I was going through relationships, basically. And this is horrible, but the honest truth is I was using whichever man was willing to support me and let me live with them and pay my bills. So I was going through relationships very, very harmful, very manipulative, and something I'm deeply ashamed of. So between the alcohol, the men, I was just floundering. I couldn't find a job. I had an international studies degree with a focus in business. I graduated in August of 2001, and then 9/11 happened. And as you can imagine, international companies were not hiring after 9/11 happened. So I was stuck in Houston, surrounding myself with people who drank like I did. That's a very common thing for an alcoholic to do. An alcoholic seeks out other alcoholics because it normalizes the behavior. Well, if they're drinking as much as I'm drinking, then I'm not an alcoholic. I'm okay. It's okay. So I was in a very, very dark place for the 4 years before I hit rock bottom. And my rock bottom was actually getting a second DUI, driving under the influence. I was doing 12 miles an hour on the freeway, completely drunk, and I was pulled over. Thank God I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't kill anyone. Thank God. But I went to jail, and my family left me in jail for 4 days. And then the guy that I was engaged to, he had called our wedding off. That's why I was driving. I had decided to go to New Orleans after he told me that the wedding was off a week before it was supposed to happen. Not that that's an excuse or justification to drink and drive. But I asked my aunt and uncle, they're the ones who raised me off and on throughout my childhood, if I could come live with them because my fiance was kicking me out. And they said no. And I had nowhere to go except for my other aunt and uncle. And I consider them to be very white trash. They are filthy, live in a filthy home infested with cockroaches, a mobile home where there were actually parts of the floor where they used orange cones to say, don't step here, because the floor was rotted through. And if you stepped on that spot, there was a chance that you would fall through the floor. So these were people that I had always considered myself better than them. And I know that's not nice, but I'm being very honest here. And I asked if I could live with them because if they had said no, I would have been on the streets. I would have been homeless again. But they said yes. But that was my rock bottom, having to go live with them. And I stopped drinking when I went to live with them after going to jail. I had stopped drinking, and 2 weeks after moving in with them, I flew to Seattle, Washington, and became a nanny for a family up there. I got myself out of Houston, away from the people that enabled me. My family had basically shut me off, rightfully. So going to Seattle, becoming a nanny was an option for me to have a roof over my head, to get paid a little bit of money. I love children, and I didn't have anything else. It was my only option. And I'm going to say some things, and I'm just being truthful. It may sound offensive, and I'm sorry in advance, but it was very easy for me to get a job as a nanny because I am white, I am female, I graduated college, and I am very good with people. I went to 13 schools by the time I graduated high school. So I got very good at meeting people and being social and getting people to like me. So for those reasons, I actually had 2 families that wanted me to come be a nanny for them. One was in Chicago, the other was in Seattle. And I chose Seattle because Chicago has a lot of snow. I didn't realize that in Seattle, it rains like every day for 9 months. But it got me out of that situation. And I stayed sober for several months. It was the restart that I needed. And I met who would become my husband and the father to our daughter. And he was from England, and he didn't understand how severe my alcoholism was. And he encouraged me to have a drink. And after a few times of him saying, here, have a drink, have a beer, have a glass of wine, I caved in and I started drinking again. Not as heavily, but I did start drinking. I became pregnant and stopped drinking pretty much. There were a few instances, but as soon as she was born, I immediately went back to drinking again and going out dancing at night and basically like falling back into those old patterns that I had developed in Houston. And my daughter was born August 7th, and on November 8th, I woke up in the bathroom asleep. I was sleeping on the floor mat, the bathroom floor mat. And I woke up hungover from the previous night. And that is the day that I decided that I could and would be a mother to my daughter, that I would give her the childhood that I didn't have. And it is my sobriety date. I have been sober from that point forward. And it is due to my daughter. And I say that God gave her to me for a reason, to get my life together, to overcome the obstacles and the pain and the hurt that I was struggling with, that I used alcohol to numb all of the pain from that childhood, from that list of traumas that I went through as a child. So it wasn't a perfect resolution. November 8th is my sobriety date. November 8th, 2005. So, and I am proud to admit that DUI was the second DUI. That was the last ticket, knock on wood, that I have had. I have not even had a speeding ticket. Oh, life with our daughter, it wasn't easy. My husband, he was from England. We had to get married so he could stay in the country. So I always like to be very clear that we got married so he could get a green card, not because I was knocked up, not because I was pregnant. I didn't get pregnant until the weekend that we got married. So I call our daughter a wedding gift. She was a wedding present. So, and in Seattle, I got a real job, and then they closed my department down, and then my husband was offered a job in Alaska. So we went where the job was. But when you get married after knowing a person only 4 months, there are going to be issues. And we definitely had ours, but he was an amazing father to our daughter. And we had our challenges. We did end up getting divorced. And after a year, after we both examined ourselves, after we both learned our own faults, we did get remarried. So I married the same man twice, and he passed away a year after we were remarried. So I feel incredibly blessed that the last year that we had together was wonderful. He made breakfast for our daughter every morning before she went to school, but it wasn't perfect. But I came so far from the childhood that I had to the life that we were providing for our daughter. And I started off as a personal banker. I then became licensed to trade stocks and bonds and mutual funds. I eventually became a certified financial planner, a senior financial advisor. So professionally, very successful. And at 35, actually, I think it was 13 days before my husband passed away, I had to leave work due to medical disability. I am medically retired. I have rheumatoid arthritis, and it is my battle. I have a chronic long-term illness, but I live an incredibly blessed life when I think of everything that I've gone through and I was drugged on 2 separate occasions. I was drugged at one point, left for dead in a parking lot. My suicide attempts, my final suicide attempt, I put a gun to my head and I pulled the trigger twice. So it is by the grace of God that I am here. So I've come so far, and my life now, my daughter is in university. She's studying to become a teacher. I am remarried to an incredible man. I have written my book, my life story, Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines. It only goes to early 20s. So I'm thinking about writing book number 2, which covers, the 20s that I just described, the profession, the disability, the becoming a widow. I'm thinking about it, but I'm still working on getting book 1 out the door. So it's too early to say if I'm going to write the second, but I am so blessed. My life's not perfect. Like I said, I have rheumatoid arthritis. I live in pain every single day. It's not a question of if I'm going to be in pain. The question is, how badly is it going to hurt? How badly am I going to hurt today? So my life isn't perfect, but coming from where I came from and doing what I did, I am blessed. And
All right.
I feel like a lot of it was just self-determination, stopping drinking. I didn't go to AA. I didn't go to rehab. I just
Yeah.
said, I'm not doing this anymore. And I made that decision that was not going to be my life anymore. And I stopped, just
All
like I
right.
did with cocaine. I just stopped. So is one of the things that I feel has really allowed me to have the life that I do now.
Okay. Thank you very much, Adriene. So, for the listener right now who feels like, they are currently in a tunnel, no light, just survival mode, and they feel abandoned by the system that we are supposed to help them. So what's the one thing they need to do today to, keep their internal lights from going out?
You have to believe in yourself. You have to know that you are in control. The decisions that you make today are going to determine the life that you have tomorrow. If you decide to self-medicate with drugs or with alcohol, if you're self-medicating and you're numbing yourself down, it's going to perpetuate your bad situation. It's going to continue with you being stuck in survival mode and continue with not being able to see a light out. So you You have to recognize your own power and be strong, because you have the power to change your situation and to overcome what you are enduring.
So, for you, after surviving the things that break most people and building a life of education and advocacy, I'd like to know, at this point in your life, what does being successful truly mean to you?
What does it mean to me? It means being satisfied, being grateful, fulfilled. I am fulfilled, and my life is fulfilling. So that's it.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. So, for our listeners who want to sign up for updates on Unbroken or read your story, or maybe just connect with you or follow you online, so where is the best place for them to go?
So I'm on Facebook, Insta, and LinkedIn under Unbroken Caldwell. That's also my website, unbrokencaldwell.com. And if you sign up, you'll get the prologue in chapter 1 of the book. That's available through my website. You'll also see photos, my Children's Protective Services case files, psychiatric evaluations, therapist reports. I make all of that available on my website. And Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines will be available on all major platforms beginning March 17th.
All right. It's been a great time having a conversation with you. Thank you very much for taking the time and the boldness to come share your story on FailCraft. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your time joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you very much for having me. I know I discussed some very sensitive topics, but I wanted to be honest and real with your audience and with you. So thank you for having me.